Hi, I'm Chef Owen Tilley, and I want to welcome you to this edition of Ask the Chef. This week's question comes from Christine, one of our Facebook fans. And Christine's throwing a holiday party, and she wanted to know if I had a recipe for a killer crab dip. Well, Christine, I do, and as usual, it couldn't be any easier. We're going to need about a half a cup of grated Parmesan cheese, a cup of grated Monterey Jack cheese, a cup of sharp white cheddar that's been grated up as well, a cup of mayonnaise, a cup of buttermilk, a cup of sour cream, 2 cans of artichoke hearts that you want to drain first and then just give it a quick pulse in your food processor or rough chop it with a knife. Also, we're going to need 2 cups of picked crab meat and 1 8-ounce container of cream cheese that you let soften to room temperature. Now for spices, we're going to add about a half a cup of capers, some chopped fresh parsley, a little bit of dried dill, and a little bit of seafood seasoning. We're also going to add a little bit of salt and pepper into it, and that's going to finish it up. So, to start, we're simply going to take the Parmesan and we're going to put this to the side because we're going to use that a little bit later. We're going to take the sharp cheddar, the Monterey Jack, we're going to take the mayonnaise, sour cream. You can tell this is going to be cheesy, fatty, and delicious. Pour in the buttermilk and put in the cheese. Now at this point, I want to start mixing it up. It's really important for this dish to come out right that everything is mixed really well and all the ingredients are well incorporated. If you don't, and it's really, really important to temper that cream cheese because if not, it's just going to be a block and it's really going to be time consuming to get it soft. And if you'd, like I said, if you don't incorporate all the ingredients in this dish, it's not going to come out that great. That looks good to me. We're going to finish adding our ingredients. Let's pop in the crab meat, the artichoke hearts, and the half a cup of capers. And it's about 2 tablespoons of chopped fresh parsley. And we're going to just put a couple of pinches of dried thyme in. I like dried thyme because it really does bring a festive holiday flavor with the lemony flavors that the dill has. Now, the seafood seasoning that I'm using, we're going to use that a little bit later, so we'll put that to the side as well. So let me continue to mix this up. Like I said, take your time. Don't be in a hurry with this because you really do want to mix this very well. And, you know, if you're planning a holiday party and you're stretching out your prep work over a few days, you can definitely make this a couple of days in advance. Keep it in your refrigerator in an airtight container. But before you cook it, I would advise you to let it sit out at room temperature for about an hour because that's going to let the ingredients kind of temper and soften a little bit and it'll help it cook more even and quicker. So now that I've got everything well incorporated, I'm going to give it a little bit of salt. Not too much because the crab meat does contain a lot of salt and we're adding the seafood seasoning at the end, which also has a good bit of salt in it as well. I want to give it a few turns of some fresh cracked pepper for some nice pop. And we're ready to start baking it. The method that I'm using is going to be to cook it in the microwave first and then finish and toast it up in the oven. Otherwise, you can put it in the oven in the casserole dish as long as it's oven safe and bake it for about 20 minutes at 400 degrees and that'll do the job as well. But this way I'm knocking out about 15 minutes of prep time. And as you know, on the days that you're getting your party together, every minute counts. So let's take this to the microwave and pop it in for about 4 to 6 minutes. Let's get started on the bread bowl. Now, I'm using the word bread bowl. It's not the B-O-W-L. It's the French boule, basically, which means a round loaf of bread. Now, I like to use a medium-sized sourdough loaf. It's important to use sourdough. Sourdough is a little heavier, so as the bread cooks and crisps up, it's going to make a really good solid container for the dip. Now, basically what I've done is I just took a bread knife and sliced across the top of it, removing the top. Now, you'll want to remove the filling because that's where we're going to put the dip, right? I like to take it a little bit, start working my fingers down. I like to kind of remove it all in one big chunk if I can, because then what I can do is take this and cut it into strips or dices and offer that to my guests to dip in the dip. Now, you want to make sure you don't take out too much. You want to have a big cavity, but you also don't want to break through the crust of the bread because then your dip's going to leak out and you're going to have a mess. So I think that's good, and let's take a look at the microwave and see how we're doing on the dip. Ooh, well, yeah. That is nice, hot, and melted. Now we're simply going to pour the dip that's all melted and, ooh, oh, this is gooey. All right, we're just gonna go right in with the dip. And if you have a little extra left over, go ahead and put it in a container, airtight container, store it in the refrigerator, and you can use it in the next couple of days. Because trust me, there's not gonna be any left over by the time your guest gets done with it. So now that we have the dip inside the bowl, I'm gonna take some of that Old Bay seafood seasoning, give it a good sprinkle across the top. I mean, don't be shy. This is just going to add flavor all the way through when they start dipping the crackers and the bread into it. So now we're going to go to that shredded Parmesan I talked about earlier. Just going to give it a good sprinkling as well. Now remember, the dip inside is hot, so all we're really doing is crisping up the bread and melting the cheese and letting it get toasty. So now let's go to the oven. Just going to take it, pop it in the oven. It's at about 400 degrees, and we're going to cook it probably for about close to 10 minutes. But like I said, until the bread's crispy and the cheese is all melted and done. Now it's been about 10 minutes, but before we take the dip out of the oven, you want to make sure you have a plate ready to put it on so it can go straight to the buffet. Now I just took a plate, simply gave it a little bit of fresh parsley, and took the inside of the bread and ripped it up into chunks so that your guests can dip it inside of the crab dip. So let's go down to the oven. All right, as you can see, the outside of the bread is nice and toasty and crisp, making a good container for our dip. And as you can see, that Parmesan cheese, nice and brown. So carefully, let's transfer it over to the serving plate. And there you have it, Christine, a killer crab dip for your holiday party that couldn't be any easier. I want to thank Christine for asking the question of how to make the killer crab dip, and I want to invite you back for next week's installment of Ask the Chef. And remember, you keep asking, I'll keep cooking.